One of the strongest points in regards to Assassin's Creed 3 is that unlike the other games in the series, the assassins that you recruit actually have some personality and uniqueness. And so with that in mind, in today's video we'll be going through the story and lore of every assassin that can be found in Assassin's Creed 3, with the only exception being Achilles, because he will be in a video when I get to covering Assassin's Creed Rogue. I also quickly want to say a thank you to the channel members. Your support is greatly appreciated and it helps out tremendously. Anyway, with all that said, let us get started. Miko was the alias of the co-leader of the British Brotherhood of Assassins alongside Edward Kenway in the early to mid 1700s. He was also the keeper of the Grand Temple Key, a powerful issue artifact that the British Templars were determined to get their hands on. Very little is known about his past. He went only by the name Miko and was often described as a free spirit. Sometime in the early 18th century, he joined the London-based British Assassins. In 1723, Miko met Edward Kenway, a former pirate who had recently arrived from the West Indies. Miko introduced him to the Brotherhood, and the two quickly rose through the ranks to become its joint leaders. Neither of them officially took the title of mentor, as they both disliked the formality and ceremony that came with it. Together they brought much needed stability to the London Brotherhood. Edward focused on building alliances within the city, using his charm and connections, while Miko travelled across Europe in search of pieces of Eden. Along the way he supported other assassin branches and built strong ties with them. That stability was shattered in 1735 when Edward was murdered in his own home by mercenaries hired by the Templars, who were after his journal on issue sites. With Edward gone, Miko became the sole leader of the British Assassins, and the Brotherhood soon began to decline. At some point, Miko became acquainted with Achilles Davenport, the mentor of the Colonial Brotherhood. In 1751 he wrote to Achilles, praising the growth of the new Brotherhood, but warning him about the growing threat posed by the British right of the Templar Order. Miko explained that the Grand Master Reginald Birch was searching the world for pieces of Eden, and intelligence suggested that he would soon turn his attention to the 13 colonies. He also mentioned an upcoming mission to Corsica and promised to contact Achilles again as soon as he could. Not long after, Miko travelled to Corsica to protect Lucio Albertine, an assassin allied codebreaker. At the time, the island was in the middle of a revolution, and Miko and Lucio were staying in a rebel encampment with Corsican fighters, trying to win independence from Genoa. One night, in June of 1753, the camp was attacked by Genoese troops. As Miko helped the rebels hold them off, he told Lucio to make a run for a nearby barn. Around the same moment, Haytham Kenway arrived with the intention of kidnapping Lucio. While Miko was busy fighting the Genoese, Haytham knocked Lucio unconscious and tried to escape down a ravine. When the camp was fully overrun, Miko realised that Lucio was gone and chased after them. He caught up with Haytham and attacked him with his hidden blade. Just as Miko was about to finish him, Haytham blocked the strike and dragged him toward the edge of a crevice. The two struggled, but Miko didn't notice that Haytham was unfastening his own hidden blade. Haytham struck his other hand, forcing the assassin to lose his grip and fall. Miko managed to catch onto a rope and started climbing back up. Haytham threatened to cut it and told him to leave, so they could settle things another day. Miko agreed, but Haytham warned him that if they ever met again, one of them would end up killing the other. That moment came on April 18th, 1754, when Miko attended a performance of the Beggar's Opera at the Theatre Royal with his young nephew, Duncan Little. The Templars had learned from Edward Kenway's journal that Miko held the key to the Grand Temple. Haytham slipped into the theatre to kill him and claim it. As Haytham quietly approached from behind his seat, Miko remarked that there could have been another way. Haytham replied that Miko would have seen through his intentions if he approached him openly. After a brief mutual apology, Haytham stabbed Miko in the back with his hidden blade, killing him instantly. He then took the key and silenced Duncan when the boy arrived to find his uncle dead. Louis Mills was born in Brighton in southeast of England and grew up as the son of a sailor. By the time he was 10, he was already helping his father aboard ships, and that same year he went on his first naval voyage aboard the Windward, which sailed from London to Boston. As he got older, he continued working on merchant vessels and built a reputation as a reliable, level-headed sailor. In 1752, he signed on as part of the crew of the Providence. On the second day of the voyage, Mills was on the upper deck with two crewmates, Hector Graves and Mr. Quill. When Haytham Kenway came up from his quarters, Mills tried to break up a fight between Graves and Haytham, but wasn't able to stop it. Once it was over and Samuel Smythe arrived, Mills brushed it off as the boys just having a bit of sport, covering up the brawl before Haytham left with the captain. By the 28th day of the journey, Mills was drinking below deck near a group of crew members celebrating. He had a short conversation with Haytham, mostly about the other sailors, and mentioned that the crew didn't have much love for the captain for cutting costs in a way that affected them. He also hinted that he was trying to prevent a possible mutiny. Later that night, he secretly threw painted cargo overboard. For the next 5 days, Mills continued dumping the marked cargo into the sea, leaving a trail for the Achilles to follow. On the 33rd day of the voyage, the Providence was attacked and Haytham was sent below deck. Whilst there, Mills confronted him and revealed that he was actually an assassin. He explained that they were hunting Haytham for killing Miko at the theatre. Mills offered to treat Haytham with honour if he surrendered, but Haytham instead asked for a sword. Respecting his choice, Mills handed one over, and the two duelled. The fight was short, and on the 21st of May of 1754, the more experienced Kenway killed Mills. Robert Faulkner originally started his career in the Royal Navy, but since he couldn't afford to buy commissions, he eventually left and joined the United Company of Merchants. He turned out to be an excellent sailor, known for running a disciplined crew and steering clear of trouble. He also had a remarkable ability to predict the weather. While working as a merchant in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Robert served alongside David and Richard Clutterbuck aboard the Stalwart starting in 1750. Around that time, he was also in a relationship with Amanda Bailey. During one of their voyages, his ship and crew were rescued by the Achilles and Achilles Davenport. Impressed by the ship and grateful to Achilles, Robert offered his help. He later set up a shipping route that connected the colonial assassins with their European counterparts, working with Louis-Joseph Gaultier to make it happen. In 1751, Robert began looking into two powerful French shipping families, the Levesques and the Delisles, because he suspected they had ties to the Templars. The situation worried him, and he shared his concerns with Chevalier. 2 years later, he was officially recruited into the Colonial Brotherhood as first mate of the Achilles, leaving his old friends behind without much warning. He served on the ship for the next 15 years, though he always turned down the chance to become captain. During the 1760s, the Colonial Templars launched a full-scale campaign to wipe out the assassins, which ultimately led to the destruction of the Achilles in 1768. Robert happened to be one of the few that survived the purge. He had the wreck towed back to the harbour at the Davenport homestead, where he sank his sorrows into alcohol and lived alone in a small shack by the shore. In March of 1770, Achilles introduced Robert to his new recruit, Connor. The young assassin had already convinced the lumberers, Terry and Godfrey, to help, and they gathered the timber needed to repair the Achilles. 6 months later, once the ship was seaworthy again, Robert assembled a crew and took Connor aboard to teach him how to command a vessel. They sailed to Martha's Vineyard to purchase cannons and recruit gunnery officers. While there, Robert reunited with Amanda as well as David and Richard Clutterbuck, and managed to recruit the two brothers. However, Connor spotted the Templars Nicholas Biddle and Benjamin Church nearby and nearly started a fight, which Robert and Amanda had to quickly defuse. After that, Robert trained Connor in using the Achilles' newly installed cannons and swivel guns, but as they set course for home, they were intercepted by English frigates, which gave Connor his first real taste of naval combat. In 1773, the Achilles returned to Martha's Vineyard after reports of gunboats threatening merchant ships. Connor and Robert escorted one vessel to safety while fending off the attackers. They soon ran into a blockade of naval mines, and Robert suggested shooting the mines to turn them against the enemy. Not long after, they discovered that Fort Phoenix had been reoccupied. Despite heavy mortar fire, the Achilles managed to destroy the fort. Robert suspected the Templars were behind the raids, while Connor decided to head home and piece together the bigger picture. Later that year, Connor began searching for the legendary treasure of William Kidd. During these expeditions, the Achilles would anchor offshore, while Robert rowed Connor to wherever he needed to go. The first clue was hidden inside Fort Walcott, and Connor infiltrated the fort to recover part of the treasure map, while Robert returned to the Achilles and ordered an attack to cover the assassin's escape. In 1774, Robert accompanied Connor to Dead Chest Island to recover the second part of the map, and later to Ceros, where Connor searched for Kidd's cutlass. In 1776, the Achilles sailed to Nantucket, where Robert and Connor met up with Amanda Bailey. She told them that Nicholas Biddle, now the captain of the USS Randolph, had been raiding the coastline. The Achilles then sailed straight into a storm to rescue a merchant ship that was under attack by the Randolph and its fleet. After saving the vessel, they gave chase, but they were intercepted by English frigates. Although they managed to sink them, the delay and worsening storm forced the Achilles to abandon the pursuit. Robert couldn't understand why Biddle, supposedly a patriot, was working with the British. Connor, however, realised that Biddle was manipulating events to pressure the Continental Congress into strengthening the navy. Later that year, the Achilles headed to the Caribbean to escort the French supply ship La Belladonna. The Randolph had originally been her escort, but had abandoned her. Not long after the British attacked and their man-of-war disabled La Belladonna, the Aquila boarded the enemy ship and Connor interrogated its captain, a Templar who revealed that Biddle had tipped them off. When Connor spotted the Randolph, Robert ordered an attack, but Connor called it off, refusing to leave La Belladonna undefended. Also in 1776, the Aquila sailed to the Northwest Passage and later to Jamaica so Connor could recover 2 more pieces of William Kidd's treasure map. When the map was fully assembled, Robert realised that the treasure was hidden on Oak Island, a quiet, forgettable place he'd sailed past countless times. When they finally reached it the following year, he was uneasy, disturbed by how much effort Kidd had gone in order to hide something there. After Connor located the sinkhole where the treasure was buried, they were attacked by wolves. Robert ran, while Connor quickly dealt with them. They then used explosives to open the sinkhole, and Connor jumped in. When he eventually came out of a cave, Robert was disappointed to see he'd only found a single coin, but when he lifted his flask, the coin suddenly emitted an energy field that knocked it from his hand. That was when Connor realised Kidd's treasure was actually a Ring of Eden. In 1778, Robert sailed to Martinique with Connor and Haytham Kenway in search of Benjamin Church, who had stolen supplies from the Continental Army at Valley Forge. During the voyage, Robert defended Connor from Haytham's dismissive and critical remarks about his son's sailing. When the Aquila disabled Church's ship, Robert realised Haytham had deliberately pushed Connor to ram it so they could board. Even so, he carried on with his duties, ordering the crew to secure the ships and prepare for the attack. Later that year, the Aquila tracked down the Randolph near the Bahamas and successfully boarded her so Connor could assassinate Biddle. Instead, Connor chose to honour Biddle's final request and let him go down with his ship. Robert was disappointed, seeing it as a waste of a perfectly good vessel, but he still encouraged the crew to celebrate their victory. In September of 1781, Robert sailed with Connor during the Battle of Chesapeake. The Aquila was ordered to hold the bay with just 2 other ships, until Admiral de Grasse returned with the main fleet. In the end, the Allies were sunk and the Aquila's guns were disabled by a man-of-war. To Robert's shock, Connor rammed the enemy ship, boarded it, and detonated its gunpowder stores. He then managed to make it back to the Aquila just as the man-of-war exploded. This is the last known event regarding Robert Faulkner. Stephane Chapheau was born in Canada around 1743. His father worked as a cook for French officers during the 7 Years' War, but like many others, he was eventually forced into frontline combat despite having no real training. He was later killed fighting at the Plains of Abraham. After his father's death, Stephane took up work as a chef himself and moved to Boston in 1764. While living in Boston, Stephane became one of the many colonists frustrated with British parliamentary policies. He strongly supported the Patriot cause and the push for independence, which would eventually lead to the American Revolutionary War. In 1765, he joined a mob protesting the Stamp Act, which imposed direct taxes on the colonies, and took part in the looting of Governor Thomas Hutchinson's mansion. 5 years later, he was present during another protest that escalated into the Boston Massacre. Around this time, he was also arrested and fined several times for drunkenness and getting into fights. In 1773, while working for William Molyneux, a tax collector showed up at Stephane's home demanding payment. Stephane refused, angrily calling him a thief, and dumped the contents of his chamber pot on him. A brawl broke out between Stephane, the taxman, and his guards, until Connor stepped in to help. Grateful for the rescue, Stephane promised to buy Connor a drink someday. Later, when British soldiers robbed Stephane's home and stole his footlocker, he led another angry protest against the taxes. During the chaos, he and Connor spotted a tax collector in the marketplace. Stephane attacked him, driving his butcher's knife into the man's shoulder. The taxman revealed he was actually working for William Johnson. On Connor's advice, Stephane quickly ended the man's suffering. Not long after, Connor explained the truth about the Templar Order and the assassins to Stephane. Inspired by the cause, Stephane offered to fight alongside him in the struggle against injustice and for freedom. He later helped Connor during the Boston Tea Party, holding off guards while they dumped crates of tea into the harbour. After completing several missions with Connor, Stephane rose through the ranks and eventually became a fully fledged assassin. In 1776, Stephane travelled to New York with Achilles to stop Connor from being executed on false charges of plotting to murder George Washington. In 1781, Stephane joined the other assassins in helping the Marquis clear out the tunnels beneath New York's fortified district. This was part of Connor's plan to infiltrate Fort George and assassinate Charles Lee. Duncan Little was born in 1742. Originally coming from Ireland, he was the youngest child in a very large family. On 18th of April 1754, he attended a performance of the Beggar's Opera at the Theatre Royal in London with his uncle Miko. During the show, Haytham Kenway murdered Miko, and Duncan witnessed the killing, which is something he never forgot. At a young age, Duncan entered the priesthood and was sent to Africa as a missionary in 1756. He spent several years there, but by 1760 he had returned to Ireland and decided to leave the priesthood altogether. Not long after, in 1763, Duncan sailed to Boston. His decision to abandon the Catholic Church had earned him harsh treatment from his family, so he chose to start a new life in the colonies. He settled in the northern district of Boston, where he became known as a fair and affordable mediator, often helping people resolve disputes without resorting to violence. Around 1773, Duncan became an ally of Connor while they were dealing with a group of mercenaries threatening the livelihoods of people in northern Boston. Duncan suggested forming a gang to attack the mercenary leader at the port where his men were based. After Connor assassinated the man, he revealed that the mercenary had actually been a Templar. Duncan was skeptical, thinking the Knights Templar were just a myth, but he still offered to help Connor whenever he was needed. After taking part in several missions, Duncan rose through the ranks and eventually became a full assassin. Connor later relied on Duncan for a number of operations. In 1776, Achilles called on Duncan to help stop Connor from being executed in New York. 5 years later, Duncan joined the other assassins in assisting the Marquis as they cleared tunnels beneath New York's fortified district. At some point during his time with the assassins, Duncan and Connor met in a tavern, where Duncan told him about Miko's murder years earlier, and about his brief, unsettling encounter with Connor's father. Clipper Wilkinson was born in 1756 and originally lived in Virginia, where he spent his early years working as a surveyor and hunter on the frontier with his family. It was there that he trained and became an excellent marksman. However, as the youngest of 5 children, Clipper often felt overshadowed by his older brothers and grew tired of constantly competing with them. Eventually, he drifted apart from his family and decided to move to New York. Along the way, he hoped to find contract work and possibly join colonial expeditions. By the time he was in Boston, the American Revolutionary War had broken out and his family had sided with the British loyalists. Wilkinson, however, saw firsthand how the British were forcing young men and boys into military service, even executing those who refused. Strongly opposed to this kind of conscription, he threw his support behind the Patriot cause. After hearing rumours about Connor's actions against British oppression following the Boston Tea Party, Wilkinson sought him out and asked for help. Connor went on to liberate the South Boston district by assassinating the conscription agents. Soon after, the two met again, and Wilkinson revealed he had identified the British officer responsible for the forced recruitment. The officer was preparing to gather more men at a rally. Together they decided to strike. With Wilkinson providing cover using his marksmanship, Connor assassinated the officer and freed the recruits. Afterwards, Connor explained the truth about the Templar Order and the Assassin's mission to liberate humanity. Inspired, Wilkinson joined the Brotherhood and took part in several missions during the war, eventually becoming a full assassin. In 1776, Clipper returned to New York to help prevent Connor from being executed. Deborah Carter was born in New York to Amos Carter, a merchant who was constantly in debt after a string of failed businesses. By the time she was 10, she had lost both her parents and was forced to survive on the streets. To get by, she disguised herself as a boy and took on the nickname Dobby, and she began working as an errand runner. Most of her employers weren't actually fooled, but they pretended not to notice, either out of sympathy or because she was simply good at what she did. When she reached puberty, Deborah could no longer keep up the disguise, but she kept the name Dobby and continued her courier work. As she gained experience, she started acting as a mediator, negotiating deals between businesses. She built a reputation in her neighbourhood for helping the poor, doing everything she could to make sure people had clean clothes and enough to eat. That often meant confronting merchants who tried to overcharge or exploit the community. By the time she met Connor, she had already become something of a local hero, almost a Robin Hood-like figure. The American Revolution only made things harder for the people of New York. In 1777, a famine hit the farms on the northern outskirts of the city. She quickly realised that greedy merchants were partly to blame. They claimed their high prices were supporting the Patriot cause, but Deborah didn't believe them. At the time, British soldiers were raiding farms and seizing crops by force. Determined to stop it, Deborah teamed up with Connor to take down the operation. When they reached the camp, she created a distraction by pickpocketing one of the guards and sprinting away, drawing several of them with her. That gave Connor the opening he needed to assassinate the leader. Afterward, Connor explained the true nature of their enemies, that they were part of a dangerous order and that he fought to bring them down. Grateful for saving her community, Deborah promised she would fight at his side whenever he needed her. Connor soon took her up on that offer. He revealed that he was an assassin and that the people threatening New York were Templars, officially bringing her into the Brotherhood. During quieter moments, the two would meet in taverns, where Deborah would talk about her past and occasionally flirt with him. In 1781, Deborah helped the other assassins and the Marquis clear the tunnels beneath New York's fortified district. Jacob was born in 1739 near the town of Mannheim. in what is now in southwestern Germany. He was the son of a farmer and one of 13 children, though only 4 of his siblings survived into adulthood with him. Later, he married a woman named Wilhelmina, and the two had a son together. Life in Mannheim was hard, and with few prospects, Jacob enlisted as a soldier in hopes of building a better future. After several years of service, he was sent to New York as one of the Hessian troops hired by the British to fight in the American Revolutionary War. Although he was reluctant to leave his family behind, he trusted that his wife was strong enough to manage on her own, and that their son would grow up the same way. Like many Hessian soldiers, Jacob left the service after arriving overseas. Wanting to reunite with his family, he bought a plot of land and left New York to start a new life. Unfortunately, a series of crop failures forced him back into the city, where he took work as a bodyguard, the only job that really suited his skills. While living in New York, Jacob saw the city fall under the harsh martial law imposed by the Redcoats, who were increasingly oppressing civilians. Determined to push back, he joined the local resistance. During this time, he met Connor. At Jacob's suggestion, Connor began helping resistance fighters, preventing executions and interrogating redcoats to learn more about the officer enforcing martial law. To assassinate the officer, Jacob came up with a plan. He disguised himself as a redcoat and presented Connor as a captured prisoner. The ruse worked, allowing them to pass the guards and kill the targets. Afterwards, Connor revealed that the officer had actually been a Templar. Once Jacob understood the situation, he offered to join the Assassin Brotherhood. After taking part in several missions, he rose through the ranks and eventually became a full assassin. Not long after, Jacob decided to send money to his wife and son so they could join him in the colonies. While speaking with Connor in a tavern, he admitted he was worried about their safety, but when he received a letter describing how strong his son had grown, his excitement won out over his fears, and he sent them the money they needed to make the journey to America. In 1781, Jacob joined the Marquis and the other assassins in clearing the tunnels beneath New York's fortified district. Jamie Colley was born in 1744 to a dock worker named James Colley and a mother whose identity isn't well documented. As a child, he attended Trinity School, where he was known as a bright student. His teachers even remarked that he was destined for great things. After 3 years there though, Jamie left school to start earning money. He eventually became estranged from both of his parents. His father had left when he was still very young, and his mother worked in the southern colonies, caring for slaves on a plantation. Jamie strongly opposed slavery and the idea of taking away people's freedom, so he chose not to contact her because of her involvement in it. His teenage years weren't much easier. While living in New York, he was fined several times for vagrancy. Around this time, he took on various odd jobs for local businesses until he found work with a physician who quickly noted his intelligence. Jamie ended up working as the man's assistant for several years. After the Great Fire of 1776, Jamie began working in the devastated district, helping the homeless and those struck by disease. With very few resources and widespread poverty, he was left to deal with an epidemic almost entirely on his own. When Connor arrived in the city, Jamie asked for his help. Connor assisted by burning infected blankets, putting down rabid dogs, and carrying smallpox victims to the clinic for treatment. At one point, a group of Templars attacked the clinic, hoping to kill the infected and stop the disease from spreading. Connor helped to defend the place, and on his instructions, Jamie ambushed and killed the group's leader. Afterwards, Connor revealed the truth about the Templars and the Assassins and recruited Jamie into the Brotherhood. Over time, Jamie admitted that he saw the Assassins as his real family, more than his own parents. And so that is the lore and story of all 9 assassins that can be found in Assassin's Creed 3. I want to again say thank you to my channel members for the support, as it is greatly appreciated and helps out tremendously. I hope you enjoyed the video, have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.